You're not lazy, you're not broken, and you're definitely not stupid. So why do you keep ending up in the same place again? Let me describe a scene that might feel uncomfortably familiar. It's late at night. Your iPad is open. There are highlights everywhere. Carl Jung, trauma theory, attachment styles, nervous system regulation. Your YouTube history is full of self-help videos, deep talks, podcasts about healing, purpose, becoming your best self. You understand yourself more than you ever have. And yet, your life hasn't really moved. Same patterns, same hesitation, same quiet disappointment when you look at where you thought you'd be by now. This frustration doesn't explode. It doesn't scream. It just sits there, subtle, heavy, corrosive. A voice you rarely say out loud. Why am I still stuck when I know so much? And that question hurts because it threatens something deeper than failure. It threatens your identity as someone aware, intelligent, conscious. Here's the uncomfortable truth no one likes to say. Knowledge doesn't free you. Insight doesn't move you. And self-awareness on its own can quietly become a prison. This video is not here to motivate you. I'm not going to tell you to try harder, believe in yourself, or manifest abundance. Instead, we're going to expose 10 invisible psychological patterns that keep even the most thoughtful, self-aware people stuck exactly where they are. These aren't obvious habits. They don't look like fear. They don't feel like sabotage. Most of them feel like growth. And the most dangerous one of all, it feels responsible. It feels mature. It feels like you're working on yourself. But it's actually avoidance. If you've ever felt frustrated not because you don't care, but because you care deeply and still can't move, stay with me. Because by the end of this video, you won't feel more motivated. You'll feel seen. And that's where real movement begins. The illusion of preparation and the comfort of understanding. What if the reason you haven't changed is because you understand yourself too well? There's a kind of trap that only thoughtful people fall into. On the outside, it looks responsible, even wise. But inside, it quietly keeps your life exactly the same. Let's start with pattern 1, endless preparation. You tell yourself you're being careful, strategic, mature, so you prepare. You want to change careers, so you take another course, then another. Then you wait until you feel ready, confident enough, qualified enough, healed enough. You want to heal emotionally, so you read Jung. You learn about trauma responses, attachment styles, nervous system regulation. You can explain your patterns in perfect language, but when it comes to action, applying for the job, setting the boundary, leaving the relationship, nothing actually changes. This is where frustration begins to harden, because preparation feels like progress. It gives you clarity, it reduces anxiety. But clarity is not movement. The most common mistake here is confusing understanding with transformation. You tell yourself, once I know enough, then I'll act. But knowing more doesn't remove fear. It just makes fear more articulate. Now comes pattern number 2, insight as identity. At some point, self-awareness stops being a tool and becomes who you are. You're not just someone who's learning. You're the one who understands, the one who sees deeper than others. You listen to people talk about their problems and think, they don't get it like I do. This comparison feels subtle, even unconscious, but it creates a hidden distance between you and real change. Carl Jung warned about this. Insight that is not embodied doesn't liberate, it inflates the ego. Not the loud ego that boasts, the quiet one that says, I'm different, I'm more aware, I'm not like them. And here's the uncomfortable part. As long as insight stays in your head, it protects you from risk. Because acting would mean stepping into uncertainty, where your identity as the one who understands could collapse. Understanding soothes frustration. It makes you feel safe, coherent, in control. But only action dissolves it. Action is clumsy. Action is imperfect. Action exposes you to failure and to success. And sometimes you don't act not because you're afraid of failing, but because you're afraid of what success would take away. The familiar version of you. The story you tell about being almost there. The identity built on preparation instead of participation. And that fear? It goes deeper than you think. Because in the next pattern, we're not talking about knowledge anymore. We're talking about who you might lose if you actually change. Fear of outgrowing your old self and loyalty to suffering. Who would you disappoint if you actually changed? This question is uncomfortable because it points to something we rarely admit. Sometimes what keeps you stuck isn't fear of the future. It's loyalty to the past. Let's look at pattern 3, identity attachment. You don't just live your life. You live inside a story about who you are, where you came from, and what people expect from you. If you become healthier, calmer, more confident, do you still belong? Belong to the family that knows you as the sensitive one. The friend group where you're the listener, the fixer, the one who struggles quietly. The community where your pain made sense, where your wounds gave you a role. This is where frustration becomes sharp. You feel yourself wanting to move forward, to set boundaries, to choose differently, to grow. But every step forward feels like a step away from something familiar. So you stall. Not because you don't want change, but because you don't know who you'd be without the old version of yourself. Carl Jung understood this well. He believed that identity isn't just personal, it's relational. Who you are is constantly reinforced by the people around you. And when you begin to change, the system resists. Sometimes subtly, sometimes loudly. Now comes pattern number 4, loyalty to suffering. This one is harder to see because it doesn't look like self-sabotage. It looks like endurance. You've survived pain before. You know how to function inside it. There's a strange comfort in what's familiar, even when it hurts. Jung taught that the shadow isn't only made of dark impulses or unacceptable traits. It also contains the parts of us that learned to survive through suffering. Pain becomes safe. Freedom becomes unknown. And here's the common mistake. We believe that letting go of suffering means betraying our past. As if healing would erase what we went through. As if peace would invalidate the wounds that shaped us. But healing isn't betrayal. Healing is integration. It's saying, this pain mattered. It taught me something. And I don't need to relive it to prove my strength. When you stay loyal to suffering, frustration grows quietly in the background, because part of you knows there's more, and another part refuses to leave what it recognizes. This is the tension that keeps people suspended between who they were and who they could become. And here's the deeper truth. As long as your identity is anchored in pain, growth will feel like loss. Which brings us to the next pattern. Because even when you want to move forward, your mind may step in. Not to help you change, but to keep you safe from the discomfort of actually feeling what change requires. Overthinking as control and emotional avoidance. What if your intelligence is the thing keeping you stuck? This pattern hides in plain sight, especially among thoughtful, capable people. It doesn't look like fear. It looks like competence. Let's begin with pattern number 5, analysis paralysis. You don't rush into things. You research. You weigh the pros and cons. You imagine every possible outcome before making a move. On paper, this looks responsible. But in real life, it creates stillness disguised as wisdom. Every decision becomes a mental project. Should you leave the job? What about the market? The timing? Your resume? Should you end the relationship? What if you're misreading your emotions? What if it's just a phase? You know the risks. In fact, you know them so well that movement feels reckless. This is where frustration tightens. Because you're not confused. You're overloaded. Your mind keeps saying, just one more variable, one more piece of information. But certainty never arrives. Analysis doesn't fail because it's wrong. It fails because it tries to eliminate uncertainty before action, and life doesn't work that way. Now comes pattern 6, thinking instead of feeling. This is more subtle. You don't avoid emotions, you explain them. You can talk about your sadness for hours, where it came from, what triggered it, how it connects to your childhood. But when was the last time you actually allowed yourself to feel it? To sit with the heaviness in your chest, to let grief move through your body without commentary. Many people mistake emotional literacy for emotional presence. Carl Jung called this an imbalance of the psyche. When the feeling function is suppressed, the mind takes over as a defense. Thinking becomes a shield. Because feeling is unpredictable. It can't be optimized or controlled. It demands that you stay present with discomfort instead of solving it. And here's the quiet truth. As long as your mind runs ahead of your emotions, you'll feel stuck, even when you know exactly why you feel the way you do. This is why intelligent people often feel more frustrated than confused ones. They can explain their pain, but they can't move through it. So here's the lesson of this pattern. You don't need more answers. You don't need better strategies or deeper analysis. You need more tolerance for discomfort, for uncertainty, for sensations that don't resolve immediately, for feelings that don't make sense yet. Because growth doesn't happen when you understand everything. It happens when you stay present long enough for something new to emerge. And in the next pattern, we'll see what happens when the mind isn't just overthinking, but outsourcing responsibility altogether. When you wait for certainty, permission, or someone else to tell you it's time to move. And that waiting can quietly put your entire life on hold, waiting for certainty and outsourcing authority. You keep waiting for a sign, but what if you already ignored it? At some point, overthinking evolves into something quieter and more dangerous. Waiting for the right moment, waiting to feel ready, waiting for clarity that never quite arrives. This is pattern number 7, certainty addiction. You tell yourself you're being responsible. You don't want to make impulsive decisions, so you wait until you're 100% sure. But here's the truth no one prepares you for. Certainty doesn't come before action, it comes after. Every meaningful change in your life, leaving a job, ending a relationship, choosing a path, required a leap without full information. There was always risk. There was always doubt. When you demand certainty first, life goes into standby. Your days keep moving, but your direction doesn't. Plans stay hypothetical. Dreams remain drafts. This is where frustration turns into stagnation. Not because you chose wrong, but because you never chose at all. Now let's look at pattern number 8, outsourcing authority. This one often hides behind humility. You read another book, you watch another teacher, you ask for advice from people who seem more advanced, more spiritual, more experienced, and learning is valuable. But slowly, something shifts. You stop trusting your own sense of timing, your own intuition, your own judgment. Every decision needs validation. Is this the right path? Am I healed enough yet? What would a wiser person do? Carl Jung described individuation as the process of reclaiming authority from the outside world and bringing it back inside. Not rejecting guidance, but no longer needing permission to live your own life. Here's the key distinction. A mature person is not someone who knows more. A mature person is someone who takes responsibility for their choices, even the wrong ones, especially the wrong ones. Because mistakes made consciously teach more than perfect decisions made through obedience. When you outsource authority, frustration grows in a specific way. You feel capable but powerless, informed but stuck, surrounded by wisdom, yet disconnected from your own. So here's the small but radical lesson of this pattern. You don't need another sign. You need to decide who holds the steering wheel. Certainty is not a prerequisite for movement. Responsibility is. And in the next pattern, we'll look at what happens when you do let go. When old identities fall away, but no new one has formed yet. Because that empty space, it scares people more than suffering ever did. Avoiding grief and fear of the empty space. What if you're stuck because you haven't mourned yet? This is the pattern almost no one talks about. Because grief doesn't look like a productivity problem. It looks like silence. Let's begin with pattern number 9, unprocessed grief. Every real change in life requires a small death, not a dramatic one, a quiet one. The end of a relationship, the loss of a dream you outgrew, the version of yourself that believed things would turn out differently. But most people don't mourn these endings. They move on quickly, they reframe, they stay busy, and by skipping grief, they skip transition. This creates a specific kind of frustration. The feeling of being in between. You're no longer who you were, but you haven't arrived at who you're becoming. So your energy scatters, your motivation drops. Nothing fully engages you. You're standing in the doorway between two identities and wondering why nothing feels solid. Jung believed that without conscious mourning, the psyche cannot reorganize itself. Grief is not weakness. It's a psychological process that completes a chapter. Without it, the past stays unfinished. Now comes pattern number 10, fear of emptiness. This one often appears right after you let go. You leave the old job, you step out of the relationship, you stop playing the role that once defined you. And suddenly there's space, no drama, no urgency, no constant identity to perform, just quiet. And for many people, that quiet is terrifying because suffering at least gives structure. Pain gives meaning, roles give direction. Emptiness offers none of that. So the mind rushes to fill it with distractions, new problems, new identities, new noise. But here's the Jungian insight that changes everything. The void isn't nothingness. It's the womb of the new self. It feels empty because something old has dissolved, not because nothing is coming. But this stage requires patience. Presence, the courage to not immediately replace what was lost. The lesson here is subtle but profound. If you don't allow yourself to grieve, you'll stay loyal to what you've already outgrown. If you don't tolerate emptiness, you'll rebuild the same life with different details. So if you feel stuck right now, ask yourself this: what haven't I fully said goodbye to? Because once grief is honored and emptiness is allowed to breathe, movement returns on its own. Not forced, not frantic, but true. And that's where everything we've talked about begins to come together. That frustration you feel? It's not a problem. It's a signal, a quiet one at first. A tension you carry while doing all the right things. Learning, reflecting, trying to improve. But frustration isn't telling you that you're lazy or broken or incapable. It's telling you that something inside has already outgrown the patterns that once kept you safe. You're not stuck because you lack discipline. You're stuck because you've been loyal to understanding instead of action, to old identities instead of new responsibility, to familiar pain instead of unfamiliar freedom. And none of that makes you weak. It makes you human. If one of these mirrors hurt a little, if something in this video felt uncomfortably accurate, that's not shame. That's recognition. And recognition is where movement actually begins. Not the frantic kind. Not the kind driven by fear or self-criticism. But the kind that comes from finally seeing clearly what you've been protecting all along. So I'll leave you with this question. Which pattern felt uncomfortably familiar? You can leave it in the comments, not as a confession, but as a moment of honesty with yourself. And if this kind of reflection speaks to you, consider subscribing. We're not here to fix you. We're here to help you see. Because you don't get unstuck by forcing movement. You get unstuck by understanding. Deeply, gently, why staying still once made sense. And when that clarity arrives, change no longer feels like a threat. It feels like permission.